Welcome to the True Crime Cafe. I'm Angie.
I'm Becky, and you won't believe the case I have for you today.
So, what's been going on the last couple of months? Been a while.
I know it feels like forever since we have done this.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the holidays, we had family stuff going on, we had illness, we had, all kinds of life getting in the way, but we're back now.
Yes.
And yes.
Hopefully on a regular basis.
Yeah. We will be. This is it.
I'm still striving for that.
Yes. So, we'll get there.
As you know, our listeners don't, but as you know, my mom passed away.
Yeah.
At the beginning of April. So it's been like the last month and a half has just been trying to figure out a new normal.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but there were the months leading up to.
Oh, yeah. Which is why I had to stop recording. I couldn't. She had dementia, and her dementia had progressed to the point where I was barely able to do my job, that pays my bills, much less anything else. So.
Yeah, I get it.
So yeah.
Yep. And I'd met your mom a few times, and she was a character. Mm-hmm. Like, she could be a character in my Cozy Mysteries. She was very sweet and very quirky. Mm-hmm. And she really loved dogs and books. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I really enjoyed all the times I met your mom.
She liked you too. She always asked about you. You're one of the few people that when her dementia progressed, she would ask about, not by name because she couldn't remember your name, but yeah, she would ask about my friend. My friend that, that used to come over sometimes. So
that is so sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, we're striving for finding a new normal.
Yes.
Getting back into a routine. So thank you for your patience with me.
Oh, now we just need a magic door between our houses so we don't have to drive a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on that. Then we can record together in person.
That would be awesome.
Speaking of quirky, are you ready for something super quirky and disturbing?
Ooh.
And because you're a cat person and it's our first time back after many months, it has to do with cats. Yeah.
Okay. Lay it on me.
One of the things about cutting cable and having to rely on just streaming apps is that you get things you might not otherwise see. And one of those things was on the Peacock app, which my husband and I watch true crime everywhere now, not just on our normal, we used to have YouTube TV and we cut it to save money because we could just get the apps and most of them are free, like Tubi and Pluto. We watch a lot on those. So we've got the Peacock app and there's a documentary on there called Dangerous Breed, Crime, Cons, and Cats. It was released towards the end of last year. And that documentary is the inspiration for this episode, which I'm calling The Criminal Cat King of Canada.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah.
On my Peacock.
There's only 3 episodes. We watched one night and one the next night. And I think the next morning we're like, okay, we have to finish this because we can't wait for tonight.
Okay, it's now added to my stuff in my Peacock app.
Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine if the Tiger King lived in Canada, but instead of tigers, he had Persian cats. And he was a wrestler with a really bad reputation.
Okay.
That's the main character of this episode. An article of Wrestling Inc. Fred Koch, the filmmaker, said, "It was many years ago that I first met Teddy Hart. I think 10 or 11 years. I was filming a documentary about indie prairie wrestling promotions. Some of the wrestlers I met told me about a wild and unpredictable wrestler named Teddy. Since everyone was so nice in the prairie wrestling circuit, I decided I should meet Teddy and add an over-the-top character to my project. Eventually, I decided to just follow Teddy and frame the show around him and his unusual mansion menagerie. Because Teddy had 50 cats. He bred Persian cats. That's how he made a living. And that's how all this got started. Fred wanted to make a reality show because in 2012, when all this first started, the common element of a successful reality show was to have an over-the-top main character. And Teddy Hart more than fit the bill. He was the youngest wrestler ever signed to WWE, and he was also the youngest wrestler ever fired from WWE.
Alrighty.
And if you're into wrestling and you're listening right now, you might recognize the Hart family name. My husband had not watched wrestling in years, and he was like, oh, yeah, the Hart family.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy's part of this family. So Teddy's real name is Edward Ellsworth Anus. And when this project first started, he lived in a mansion with 50 Persian cats that he bred and raised for profit. And Fred was just going to spend 6 months filming Teddy, his wrestling, and his cats. Teddy was super eccentric because, well, here's an example. When people were being interviewed for the reality TV show, he wanted them to be holding a Persian cat. So here's Teddy, topless, wrestling pants, Persian cat. Here's his wife / partner. Relationship as label is kind of muddled. I might call her his wife. I might call her his partner. But her name is Faye, and here's Faye holding a Persian cat. Here's his best friend sitting there holding a Persian cat. Like everybody's holding cats.
Now, I am a cat person. Mm-hmm. We currently have 5 cats in our house and another 4 outside, like they're the outdoor colony in the neighborhood that we take care of. I would not have 50 cats in my house. I love cats. I do not have to that would be like me insisting of having one of my cats on my lap while we record our episodes. Like, no. And I'm a cat person. Yeah. I'm one of those, I see a cat and I'm like, I want to take it home. My husband says no.
Yeah. So this is one of the many eccentric things about Teddy. His 50 cats, and he wanted everybody to be holding a cat when they were interviewed. A couple of years before Fred met Teddy, Teddy hooked up with Faye, who was a successful businesswoman with a multi-million-dollar lifestyle. She had a fancy car. She had a mansion on a golf course. She was living the life. And Teddy was looking for sponsors. And Faye agreed to sponsor him for 1 month. And by sponsor, he needed someone to buy his steroids. So within 2 days, Faye said Teddy was at her side 24/7 and became super clingy and controlling. She wanted out. It got to the point where finally she was driving down the road and she just intentionally flipped her car. Yeah. So she was in the hospital for a month and traction for 6 months. And in that time, Teddy was with his new girlfriend, Michelle, who he kept separate from Faye. And so Michelle met Teddy when Teddy invited her to a hot tub party on his TV show. So once Faye recuperated, Teddy played it off like they were in a polyamorous relationship, and he had the girls hugging each other in bikinis, and they were all doing yoga, like hot yoga together. I'm going to call it hot yoga because, for family friendly sake, I'm going to call it hot yoga. But at one point, there was a lot of footage of Teddy and the cats. And at one point, Teddy was juggling the cats. You toss a baby in the air and it's like, no, don't toss that baby in the air. Just like tossing the cats in the air and like mishandling them. And I was like, see, they love it. And So when Fred finally pitched the idea of the reality TV show to Hollywood producers and he showed them some of this footage, they were like, you filmed this guy juggling cats. This is animal cruelty. We're not producing this reality TV show.
Good for them.
Yes. So Fred switched things up. Instead of a reality show about Teddy, he's like, we'll just make a reality show about Teddy's polyamorous lifestyle. Because in 2012, that was still kind of not talked about. Not like it is now. And it wasn't as widely accepted. So it was off the wall topic that would have made good reality TV. Kind of like the subject for, it would have been like content from a Jerry Springer show, but a reality TV around a wrestler. And without Big Steve to, keep everything in line.
Jerry Springer's dead.
I know.
I felt like a part of my childhood died.
I know. I was like, when I was pregnant and like anytime I had to stay home from work because I was sick with morning sickness or whatever, I would just watch Jerry Springer. Yeah. Recorded it on VHS. That's how old we are.
That's right. Thanks for aging me there. Anyway.
Yeah. And I'm older than you. So Fred switched things up. And at one point in this documentary, if I understood correctly, Teddy said he needed multiple partners because he had a great need for female energy. And at one point in the documentary, Fred tells Teddy, you're living the life, Teddy Hart. And Teddy replied, if it gets picked up by some cable TV show, it's worth it. And in the documentary, Fred's watching this stuff back and he said he's embarrassed for having filmed it. And in hindsight, he could see kind of a darkness underneath the whole thing. So let's jump ahead. About a year and a half later, Teddy's now kind of getting in the way of Fred's day job. And adding to the problem, Teddy is broke. There are days when they're supposed to meet on location to film, and Teddy doesn't have enough gas money to get there. Teddy's still in a relationship with both women, but Faye said Teddy was starting to abuse Michelle at this point. Michelle did not corroborate this in the documentary, and I couldn't find any research to support it, but you'll soon understand why I'm including this information.
Okay.
2 years into the project, Teddy's still requiring that every interview have the person holding a cat in every single shot. And also in an interview with Fred, Michelle said that if Teddy wants to scare you, he would take your papers, your passport, etc., to keep you with him, which is what he was doing to Faye and Michelle. And more about this will come up later. Around this time in 2013, this is all taking place in Canada. Teddy's decided he wants to go to this wrestling expo thing in Texas. And Faye says, yeah, you go ahead and go to Texas. So not long after this, after a lot of filming, having his patients tested, etc., Fred is finally offered $100,000 for this reality nightmare. So there we go. Teddy's in Texas. Faye and Michelle are still in Canada at the mansion. They're free of Teddy for a little while. And Fred is getting his $100,000 check for the show. And if it was happily ever after,
it would not be on our podcast.
It would not be on our podcast. And I was going to say, there's got to be more because we've only been doing this for a couple minutes now. So yeah, there's a lot more to come. We are just getting started because while Teddy was in Texas, Faye and Michelle, his wife and girlfriend back at the mansion, have now accused him of 1 count of unlawful confinement, 3 counts of assault, and 1 count of sexual assault. Fred was unaware that Teddy was keeping these women hostage, as they claimed, by confiscating their passports, yada, yada. But they said once Teddy's got you, he doesn't let you go. So before they brought charges against Teddy, Faye rented a moving truck. She got all her personal stuff out of Teddy's mansion and she put it in storage.
Okay.
And before we deep dive into what happened next, I need to point out that Fred never caught any of the actual abuse on camera. He did catch some of Teddy's violent outbursts, and he even tried to diffuse at least one of them on camera that I saw.
Okay.
But none of the actual abuse was ever filmed. Okay. So by now, Teddy's hiding out in Texas, because why would you go back to Canada if there were charges against you there? He says he's innocent. Fred said he would film Teddy's side of the story if Teddy would fly back to Canada to turn himself in. Teddy's like, okay. So Fred goes to Texas, and Teddy has a whole new life, including a new Persian cat named Mr. Money and a new girlfriend named Machiko. And why would anyone date this guy if he has assault charges, right? I know someone who dated someone who had a charges like that, and it backfired on them big time. But ladies and gentlemen, if the person you're dating has assault charges, there's a reason the charges are there. I'm not saying they're automatically guilty, but...
No, but my question is did this new girlfriend even know that he had these charges against? Oh, okay, so she did know.
Oh, yeah, she's like, no, Teddy's so sweet, he can never do that. And, she quickly learned. Machiko says that she trusted Teddy with her house because Teddy was treating her good, and that's how she judged people, by how people judged her. And Fred said that this new girlfriend seemed very much in love with Teddy, and her goal was to spend her life with Teddy, wrestle, travel the world, raise cats, and live a good life. She didn't have a good father figure growing up, which is what attracted her to wrestling and to Teddy in particular. Teddy finally says, okay, I want to be filmed to tell my side, and then I'll go to Canada. And he calls himself the crazy cat guy who assaulted his wife and girlfriend. And he said, if he's guilty, then he's a psychopath. He said, yeah.
Sounds like a psychopath.
Right? Juggling cats. I'm just going to leave it there. Juggling cats. So Teddy also claimed that he had the power to snap his fingers and have people taken out. And the closer they got to returning to Canada, the more aggressive Teddy got. And they showed a scene where Teddy was talking down to Machiko. Okay. He tells her she cannot eat during dinner unless she apologizes to him for something she said or did before dinner. He makes her repeat the apology until she says it in the way he wants it said. Fred described Teddy as someone who could do bad things, and he felt it was imperative that he urgently got Teddy to Canada so he could be arrested. So, yeah, Machiko said she wasn't used to living with someone else, and the longer they lived together, she would have moments where she was frustrated or annoyed.
Can't imagine why.
Right? Fred tells her maybe that's because Teddy is not the safest person for you to date. But she defends Teddy because Teddy said he was going to take her to Canada to meet his family. And Teddy's family has a big name in wrestling. And she's very into wrestling. So they make it to the airport. So they make it to the airport. And Teddy said, although it would be crappy to be handcuffed, it would be a relief to turn himself in so he could keep the project rolling. His initial fear of being on TV had turned into a fear of not being on TV.
Okay.
So on the plane, Fred's still filming. Teddy's drinking it up, because booze is on international flights. They just give you booze, or at least they did at this time. And Teddy says that Mr. Money is a PTSD cat, but that he's lost the paperwork. And he was using his U.S. passport to try to not be caught coming into Canada and be arrested, but the facial recognition cameras got him. So at this point, Fred's like, well, I think even the cat got arrested. So a few hours later, a police officer tells Fred that Teddy is being arrested. Machiko has a misdemeanor in the U.S. for defending herself against a past abuser. And because the cat's paperwork isn't in order, he is being deported with Machiko. So Fred said, that's it. I'm done. End of documentary. This is crazy. And Teddy could have gotten 20 years for this in Canada. But after 48 hours, one of his friends, some guy named Bill, bailed him out. And Teddy said his wrestling jacket was what saved him in jail because his family name was so big in Canada that people in jail were like, oh, the Hart family, we love wrestling. You're Teddy Hart. And like nobody beat him up, anything like that. He was just king there. So once he made bail, Teddy called Fred and was like, hey, I want to finish the documentary. And at this point, I'm almost feeling bad for Fred, even though Fred got himself into the situation by doing the documentary in the first place. Teddy said he was going to drop Machiko as a student. And after being together 24/7 for 9 months, he was just done with her. And this was years before the pandemic when people were quarantined together. So I kind of get it. Like you're with someone 24/7 for 9 months, 10 months, a year and a half, whatever. You do get on each other's nerves. Any married couple.
I love my husband.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say.
We get on each other's nerves.
Any married couple can tell you this. So a few days later, Teddy's staying with Bill and Bill's son because he couldn't go back to the mansion because his wife and girlfriend were there. And their charges against him were the reason why he was extradited back to Canada in the first place. So Fred is stuck. He has to uphold his part of the deal to keep filming. He starts looking at this as the final chapter of the documentary. Maybe he can wrap it up with the Teddy, but we know by now Fred has it's like the line from the old show Hee Haw, if it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. This could be Fred's tagline through the whole episode. In addition to all of this, Teddy's finances were on lockdown. And Teddy's wife had already said she was Teddy's only source of income. Michelle said Teddy was living off strippers, drug-addicted women, and wealthy cougars, and a long string of using person after person to get what he wanted and avoid having a regular job. So a week after Teddy was released from jail, he has Fred come interview him and his family, meaning his parents, and they're having wings and burgers, and they look super like it's a super normal family event. And Teddy's mom is like, oh, Teddy excelled at every sport he tried, especially wrestling. And she said that he'd always done better with kids and animals than with adults. But when Teddy was a teenager, his brother Matthew passed away from flesh-eating disease. And Teddy's mom said he took it very hard and probably never really dealt with it. And he often says things like, it should have been me instead of Matt. Teddy's dad was explaining that flesh-eating disease back then wasn't like it is now. Now they can, have resources, technology where they can tell within a short amount of time what's going on. Back then it was like a 4-day test. And by the end of the 4 days, he was too far gone. It was in his brain. There was no way.
Okay.
Teddy's dad also said that Teddy was his own worst enemy, and he has an IQ of 147, but he has so much social trauma because of his brother's death that having the high intelligence there's no balance there. The trauma just takes over. In a self-interview, Fred said that Teddy's parents are wonderful people who really want the best for Teddy. They believe in his innocence and they want him to succeed. But at this point, Fred has lost sight of what's real and what is just Teddy. And he's been working on the story for so long that he's beyond the stopping point. And this was in 2014.
Okay.
So Fred said in a self-interview that he has to ride the story out to see what happens, because at this point, he predicts someone might wind up dead before it's all said and done. And in 2015, Teddy invited Fred to meet Samantha Fiddler. This is just, 4 months later. They show up at Fred's office with Samantha's 3 kids. And she, like the other women who had been in Teddy's life, was described as Teddy's student, like wrestling student. Big fan of the Hart family. And they very quickly got involved. Teddy said that Samantha applied to be a nanny for Bill's son. And so they made a deal that Samantha would open her house to Teddy and Bill. And Teddy kind of has a habit of this. He meets a new, quote, air quote, student, and they very quickly become involved, and they open their house to Teddy and whoever else who needs it. And it's a pattern. And kind of like Michelle described, he goes from woman to woman, taking what he needs. And on camera, Teddy said there was more than a teacher-student relationship between him and Samantha. And Samantha was recorded as saying that he was a good father figure for her 3 girls. And she said that Teddy was not the kind of man who would do the things that Faye and Michelle would accuse him of doing. And Fred said it felt very real. He said, the feelings they said they had for each other and all, it's very genuine, very authentic. But Samantha's sister, April, looked Teddy up online and said she could tell Teddy wasn't a good guy. She said she tried to warn Samantha, but Samantha said she knew the Hart family were good people and that she wanted to be Teddy's student. And don't get me wrong, the Hart family, they probably are good people, but I think Teddy might be like the black sheep of the family there. So April and Samantha were raised Jehovah's Witnesses, but April describes Samantha as the wild child who bucked against the strict rules that came with their religion. And so, for example, when Samantha was 16, she met a guy in his 20s and she fell in love. And Samantha's parents did not want her to get kicked out of the church, so they pushed her to get married. April said the first time Samantha's husband hit her was on their wedding night, which happens all too frequently. And when Samantha decided not to go back to the church after her marriage ended, she was not allowed to return home because it's kind of like when the Amish shun you. You're not allowed back. That's it. Under Teddy's training, Samantha worked on staying thin, and she got a boob job because Teddy said she had to look the part of a wrestler. Bill financed the boob job because he thought they would be able to monetize Samantha's future as a wrestler and an MMA fighter, because that's what Teddy told him would happen. Samantha saw Teddy as her ticket to her dreams coming true. And when Teddy did legacy wrestling shows, Samantha was there. She's holding his robe. She's holding Mr. Money. Her kids were in the audience cheering him on. At this point, Fred said Teddy was more like a family guy, but there was a journalist named Omar who said that Samantha was a prop, just like the cats and everything else. Omar had written an article for Rolling Stone that kind of created a cult following for Teddy. And he said now, in hindsight, he regrets writing that article. So in January 2016, Teddy called Fred and told him to come film Teddy picking up a new Jaguar. Bill had put $3,000 on a down payment, but the car was in Bill and Samantha's name, and Teddy was supposed to help Samantha make the payments. Because remember, they're going to monetize Samantha. And Bill was only staying on the Jag's name until they started making the big money. April said when she saw Samantha pose with the car on social media, she was worried. Samantha said she gave up exotic dancing for wrestling and she was doing great, but April was worried. Within a month after Bill having financed the car, he went his separate way from Teddy and Samantha because he said he could not work in a 3-way business relationship where the other 2 people were romantically involved, which they obviously were. So Samantha left her kids with her parents and went with Teddy and Mr. Money. And it looked like it might have been other cats too, but I can't be certain. But it was at least one cat living in the Jaguar. So Samantha was happy she got to see the ocean because she was always kind of obsessed with seeing the ocean. From Tijuana, Samantha and Teddy went to Florida. And Samantha was recorded in an interview as saying that she had more of a dad role in her kids' relationship. She said, kids with their parents, and she basically sent them child support. And she said she was doing this for a year with Teddy. And in that year, she'd make enough money to buy her parents a house, get her kids back. Even if her parents turned her kids into Jehovah's Witnesses, she was going to get them back. Fred looks back on this. He said her goals sound really ambitious. But he's like, what did I know? I just wished him luck. And that was the last time Samantha was ever on camera. And this is in the early part of 2016. Samantha told April about her move to Florida over Facebook Messenger. April told her sister she didn't like it. And at first, Samantha called frequently, but then the calls dropped off. So in April 2016, Samantha is on video at a wrestling training center called Team Vision Dojo, owned by Teddy's friend, Chasen Rance. But what people don't know is that the dojo had a side hustle making erotic wrestling-themed videos, many of which star Teddy Hart. And the dojo owner says he tells students that the videos don't have to be sexual, even though clients can order custom videos with the characters they choose, doing the things they want them to see. Teddy's character was called Teddy Trouble. There were some videos that Teddy made that had gay themes, and in every video that I saw, Teddy was the dominant, aggressor part of the couple, but everybody was clothed. That's all the part of the videos I saw. I did not go looking. I'm not a dark web kind of person. When Fred found this out in 2021, he kind of wondered if Teddy was using the dojo as a way to exploit Samantha. But again, it's like hindsight. What if you're looking back, the questions. Around this time, Samantha also trained at Alex the Pug Porto's gym, which was called Pro Wrestling 2.0. And all this is in the Orlando area.
Okay.
Samantha's friend John, who I think was also from Canada, met Teddy at a wrestling event, and Teddy invited John to Florida. They picked John up at the airport in the Jag, and John said he could tell Samantha was in trouble. So they're going to go up to the hotel, but, Teddy tells John going up first. So John goes up there, but he's watching the parking lot, and an argument between Teddy and Samantha breaks out and it kind of escalates. John goes down, he gets in between them, and Teddy backs off, and John tells Samantha that she needs to get away from Teddy. But Samantha was like, no, Teddy's going to change. The man never changes. They never change. Around this time, Teddy was on social media saying that Samantha was a great student and she was really going places. Now, this is still April-ish of 2016. The next month in May, when Teddy went back for his pre-trial hearing, he was sad he could not go see Samantha's kids. And Samantha was not with them at this time. So Faye and Michelle, they are excited. They are going to get this trial over, and they want to stop Teddy from treating anyone else the way that they said that he treated them. Mm-hmm. But Teddy's family's got money, and they hired a very good lawyer. And he did what Fred described as legal jujitsu in the courtroom. And Teddy was cleared of all charges. And afterward, Teddy's dad said the only people in jail are people who cannot afford good lawyers. He said if he was Faye's father instead of Teddy's, then he and Faye would be having a steak dinner and Teddy would have been in jail that night. And that's a very sad statement to hear, but I think it has a ring of truth to it. And this was in Canada, so it's not only the United States where this crap happens.
Yeah.
So after this, Fred was like, I am done. He walked away. Bad guys won. He didn't want any more parts of it. And Samantha talked to someone who was at the dojo, one of the filmmakers, and said she needed a place to stay and a new job. She was done working with Teddy. Mm-hmm. So he got her a job doing landscaping, and he found her a place to live. In June, she had a falling out with her roommate, and she moved. So during that same summer, Samantha called one of her friends from a blocked number. She said Samantha sounded rushed. She said she just needed to get home from Florida. She said she was stuck there and she did not want to be. So Samantha's friend knew people who drove vehicles from Florida up to Nova Scotia. And once she was in Canada, it'd be easy to get her home as long as she had her passport. Not only did she not have her passport, she didn't have her phone. And she didn't say where they were, but we'll find out soon. And she told her friend, the next time you get a call from a blocked number, pick it up. But that call never came. Teddy left Samantha in Florida and he drove the Jag to Texas where he reconnected with Machiko. One night while they were out, Machiko found Samantha's passport in the glove box of the Jag. Oh. So without a passport, Samantha could only get a job that would pay under the table. So that's how she got into working in landscaping, because she could just get paid cash at the end of the day, the week, whatever. Mm-hmm. But in August, after she had left her apartment, after the falling out with her roommate, she was arrested for trespassing. And Teddy tried to play this off like maybe she was addicted to drugs, maybe she was, doing sex work, maybe she was arrested for something related to this. And in her mugshot, she does look very different from her social media profile. In her social media profile, she's all made up. Her makeup is perfect. Her hair is cute. She looks like someone who just takes a lot of pride in her appearance. But in her mugshot, looks like me on a Thursday because I've been working from home all week, in my pajamas. Mm-hmm. My hair's probably in yesterday's ponytail, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So even though Teddy told people all this stuff about Samantha, Fred did some investigating and proved that Samantha was arrested for failing to leave the emergency room of a Florida hospital. Her talk screen was clean. She was just scared and did not want to leave the hospital for whatever reason. Samantha missed all of her court dates for the trespassing charge, and a warrant was issued for her arrest. So jump to November 2016. April gets a Facebook message from Samantha, who she said thinks was using a library computer. Samantha said she loved her, missed her sister, and she was coming home soon. Samantha's calls to her kids stopped soon after, and April's future attempts to get in touch with Samantha on Facebook Messenger went unanswered. Now, you know how when you message someone on Facebook Messenger, you can see, especially if you're friends with them, their profile will show up under your message if they've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
She hadn't seen any of those messages. So around the same time, Samantha posted a selfie on social media. Her friend John said Samantha may have been dancing in a strip club because of the background, and it had some lockers. It had, just some other things in the background made him think it might be a strip club.
Mm-hmm.
And he said if she was, she was in a strip club, she was probably desperate, like that desperate to get out of Florida and come home.
Yeah.
So also in November 2016, Samantha decided that she was going to get a new ID from the Polk County Tax Collector's Office in Florida. Because I guess instead of the DMV, you went to the tax collector to get an ID. Or you could.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Florida, they're a hot mess. Who knows how Florida works? We don't. We're in South Carolina.
Yes.
We got our own hot mess. So Samantha did not know that you could be arrested in a government office if there was a warrant for your arrest. And in this mugshot, unlike the last one, her hair was cut short. It was dyed blonde. And it's not like professional dyed blonde. It's like out of the box. Like, the color. We've all went through a period where we dyed our hair out of a box.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that color yellow, like straw yellow. And April got a phone call from Florida sometime after Samantha was at the tax office, but she missed the call. The call was coming from the jail. So when Samantha was released from jail, that's the last time anyone saw her.
Okay.
And at some point, Teddy posted at least one video on YouTube that said he was in jail when Samantha went missing. And there's a Twitter account called something like, I don't think this is the exact name, but it's like, is Teddy Hart in jail today? Where you could go and you could say, hey, is Teddy Hart in jail today? And they're like, yeah or no, or what he's in jail for, where he's in jail. Like, he was in jail so much, there's a whole Twitter account dedicated to it. Yeah, right. So long story short, he was not in jail that day. So 2 months go by, now January, holidays have passed, and April will do anything to find Samantha, including calling Teddy Hart. And when she did, Teddy talked horribly about Samantha. Yes, he said they only had a student-teacher relationship. They were not romantically involved, and he called her some pretty bad names. He just talked really, yeah. So April knew very quickly that Teddy was not going to be of any help in finding her sister. So she called Florida and she attempted to file a missing persons report. And the police said, Samantha has the right to go missing. She's an adult. And April said this is kind of impossible because Samantha has no car. She has no proof of residency. She has no passport. She has no phone. So how can you prove she's not missing?
Okay. So in defense of the police department and police departments around the country, anybody over the age of 18 has the legal right to just up and walk away from their life if they choose to.
Yeah.
Which is why you always hear that police departments say you got to wait 48, 72 hours to report an adult missing, blah, blah, blah.
Which technically you don't, but...
No, you don't. So I can understand why their response was, she's an adult, has every right to disappear if she wants to.
So the Florida police also told April that she should report it to the Canadian authorities, who told her, I don't know why they told you this, because we can't do anything. She went missing in Florida and we're Canada. So
not just a different state, but a whole different country.
Yeah, whole other country.
I get it.
Yeah. So Samantha's friend, who I mentioned earlier, saw on social media that Samantha was missing and she reached out to April. And these two teamed up. April was already calling morgues and hospitals, but this friend started Googling and they found Omar, who had done the Rolling Stone article. And they explained that Samantha was missing because, after all, he mentioned Samantha in his article. So 2 years go by and they have hashtags like that help search for Samantha, and Samantha's missing, and they're on social media. And they found a Twitter group that will help, like, just blast that out there. And so they're doing all that they can. But in 2019, April runs across some mention of Fred and is like, hey, can you help me find my sister? And I'm not sure why it took 2 years, but Fred's like, yeah. So Fred goes to Teddy and he's like, hey, will you help me understand what happened to Samantha? Will you help me figure it out? Teddy finally says yes, but only after Fred is like, Teddy, this is your chance to control the narrative. You can get your side of the story out there. You can get ahead of anything that might have happened. So Teddy actually told Fred, don't use this as a tool to look for Samantha, because Teddy he's a piece of work. He said Samantha was a good athlete and they were friends, but she wasn't girlfriend material. And they never had sex together, which is wild because in a 2015 interview with Fred, which Bill backed up, Teddy said Samantha was amazing, the best female he'd ever known. He was like a father to her kids. He was doing their hair and, they were living like mommy and daddy. And so in this 2019 interview, Teddy tells Fred that he didn't care about Samantha because she did it to herself. And he said she got hit one time, decided wrestling wasn't for her, and she's giving up the JAG and going off to be a landscaper, which we know is not how it happened. Teddy says he gave Samantha her property from the JAG, including her passport, and he drove to Texas, which we also know is not exactly how it happened, because how could he have given her passport if Machiko saw it in the JAG in Texas after he left Samantha in Florida? Teddy seems to have a chip on his shoulder about Fred not standing up for him and defending him in that trial in May 2016 in Canada. Teddy says he lost his $800,000 house, his family mementos were in that house, and all his beloved cats, and he lost everything. And he seems to blame Fred for it. And during this interview, Teddy suggested that Samantha was a drug addict who might have run out into traffic, got hit by a car, rolled away from the highway. And if that happened, it was her own fault, if it did happen that way. And Fred's like, Teddy, you could be the hero if you would just help find Samantha. And I'm not sure what made them change their mind, but in 2019, Florida finally opened a missing person case for Samantha Fiddler. Now, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement started looking at Fiddler's appearance in 2020 at the Bartlow Police Department's request. Multiple interviews with family members and acquaintances have been conducted by agents in Florida and Canada. And in 2021, Bill said in an interview that Samantha never applied to be his son's nanny. Because remember, that's how Teddy said that he met her. Bill said Samantha was an exotic dancer and she had good energy with Bill and Teddy, and they were together from that point on. When I say good energy, like they weren't all three romantically. It was like good business energy. They were going to monetize Samantha and she's going to be their cash cow. But they described Teddy as the most abusive man she's ever met, emotionally, financially, etc. And she said wherever Teddy goes, people get hurt. And that when she was with Teddy, if she didn't act a certain way, then after filming was over, he would beat her later that night. Fred said he never saw the abuse, but at that pretrial back in May 2016, Faye showed up with hard drives full of evidence that put Teddy in a very bad light. Yeah, and he still got off because he had a good lawyer. So Fred shows April and Samantha's friend the footage from 2015 where Teddy and Samantha were obviously a couple. They said the video was hard to watch, but they were very happy to have someone on their side in the search for Samantha. And April was like, it was the first time she had heard her sister's voice in a few years. So she said just hearing her voice and hearing her laugh and everything, she said it was bittersweet to watch it, because is that going to be the last time she ever hears her sister's voice, Once Omar made a social media post, web sleuths got interested in the case. And, I said, it took them a couple years to get on board. Once I heard this part, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Samantha was an indigenous Cree woman from Canada who went missing in Florida. And I'm sure we will have a whole other episode about that. But listeners, if you are not familiar with the missing indigenous women's situation, please Google it. Educate yourself. The show Alaska Daily, which sadly did not get picked up for a second season.
It didn't.
No, I'm heartbroken. But they went into it and they used actual cases, because I'm like, oh my gosh, Angie and I talked about that one. Like, we haven't done an episode, but there are ones we talked about in there. Yeah, they use actual cases. And so according to the U.S. Department of Justice, Native American women are up to 10 times more likely than any other demographics to be murdered. They are also drastically more likely to be victims of sex trafficking, abduction, sexual assault, and domestic violence. And statistics regarding the Indigenous women in Canada revealed that they are also significantly higher risk to be victims of these crimes. But word about Samantha is finally getting out there. And I have to wonder, was she sex trafficked? Florida, surrounded on three sides by water, it'd be very easy, put women in. I know it happens in Myrtle Beach. I know it happens in Charleston, South Carolina. Like it happens in South Carolina because along the coast, because it's all coastline and the boats come in and out. And so,
well, it's not even just that, but it has become, with the growth of social media and cell phones and instantaneous communications and stuff, it has become so much easier for women to be trafficked. I have a case that I'm going to eventually do that involves sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Well, human trafficking.
Yeah. And for listeners who don't know, I know Angie does the same as I do. We see a case, we write it down, we go, we research it. And then sometimes we will spend weeks and months researching before we're ready for the episode because we want to have all the information possible. Yeah. Or you're ready to record like with the Killer Clown case. The night before it was going to air on our podcast, she made the deal. So we added that little snippet at the end to update. So by now, the wrestling world is getting involved because people are starting to hear about Teddy Hart and his abuse. And it has given people the emotional strength they need to speak out about what happens in wrestling. Machiko notices. Now she's working as a women's wrestler. She said it was not unusual for men to ask women for favors if the women wanted top billing. And she said it's taken 7 years before she was comfortable enough to tweet a list of ways that Teddy abused her while they were together, including, but not limited to, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and pimping her out to his friends for cash, like a few $1,000s. Teddy said that he was so distraught about losing everything that in a screwed up way, he subconsciously blamed Machiko since everything happened when he was with her in Texas. And that's why he treated her badly. So the host of Nightwave Radio saw Teddy Hart's YouTube channel, and he said it gave him a lot of content for his show, enough that Teddy asked to be on Nightwave Radio. So between Teddy's videos and April's tips, the host confronted Teddy and started calling him out on his lies. He referenced the Rolling Stone article that said Samantha was his girlfriend. And the radio host concluded at the end of that it did not prove that Teddy had something to do with Samantha's disappearance, but it did prove one thing. Teddy's full of crap. For example, Teddy told Fred he was in Mexico when Samantha went missing, but a video on Teddy's YouTube channel proves that was a lie. Teddy said he was praying for a happy ending because Samantha's family, especially her kids, deserve a happy ending, but he doesn't know what happened to her. Teddy said he's never hurt any kids, animals, or women, even though he's been videotaped juggling cats and physically threatening women.
It sounds to me like Teddy may have a mental health disorder that is treated.
And it might have stemmed with his brother's death. That might have been the catalyst. And because he didn't deal with those emotions, he's still not dealing with them. So Fred does not think that Teddy hurt Samantha. He wants to believe that Samantha's still out there. He said that, he thinks that Teddy took Samantha's resources, which put Samantha in a bad situation, and it might have led to something bad happening, but he doesn't think Teddy directly did anything. Omar, the journalist, said that there's a tragic history of treating Indigenous women as disposable, and unfortunately, that might have applied to Samantha. Samantha's sister, April, and their friend who was helping with the search have both accepted that Samantha's probably not still alive, which to me is heartbreaking. The cautionary tale here is don't get involved with Teddy Hart. Faye said that Teddy was the last person she dated. She has not dated anyone, even though she has not had contact with him for 7 years. And she's still raising Persian cats. Machiko is still pursuing a wrestling career and using wrestling as a platform to encourage women to get out of abusive situations, which I think is one of the positives in this whole tragic tale. And she still has Mr. Money. She kept the cat. Yep. So Teddy was on probation in the U.S. for an assault unrelated to Samantha's disappearance as of 2022, which is just last year. And the state of Florida has never questioned him about Samantha's disappearance, despite declaring that they want to talk to him as a potential witness last November. They said he's on a growing list of witnesses they'd like to talk to, but he's not a person of interest. Also, last November, Teddy was scheduled to work the USA Pro Wrestling's 30th anniversary show in Orlando, Florida. And he was going to do it to pay off a previous debt, I guess, to the organization. But the promoter announced that they want no part of the controversial wrestler following allegations made against him.
I don't blame them.
And this is what they wrote on Facebook. They said, "Attention, everyone. We will not be doing any business with Teddy Hart effective immediately. Teddy was to appear in our next event, working off a previous debt from years ago. And once we heard about the allegations against him, we decided we want no part of Teddy Hart." And that was after the documentary aired on Peacock. So that was like when everything blew up and people really started knowing about him. Fred regrets legitimatizing Teddy Hart in the eyes of other people like Samantha, who were in the videos he filmed for the potential reality show. He said it's made him more aware of the consequences of doing projects like this, the one that involved Teddy Hart. And in the Wrestling Inc. article, he said that there were some scenes that were too wild to air in the documentary, and that since filming wrapped up, he has not had any long conversations with Teddy. So we will also put this in the description of this episode, but if you knew Samantha Fiddler while she lived in Florida between March 2016 and November 2016, or if you have any information about her current whereabouts, please call the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in Tampa at 1-800-226-1140. And that is my sad tale about the criminal cat king of Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, I warned you.
Yeah, you did. You did tell me it was going to be a doozy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I really deep dived on this one.
But yeah, it definitely sounds like he's got a mental health issue.
Yeah.
That's either undiagnosed or untreated, or both.
And while that's no excuse.
It's no excuse at all.
Yeah.
But although it's no excuse, it could be an explanation for some of his bizarre behavior. And
it is important to point out that it's okay to have an explanation without it being an excuse. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Definitely. That's crazy. Now I want to go watch the documentary.
Yeah. The episodes are about 50, 55 minutes, maybe an hour each. And there are only three of them. There are only three of them.
That might be what I watch tomorrow while I'm working.
Yeah. Just maybe don't let the cats watch. We don't want to traumatize the kitties. Stay caffeinated.
And join us next time for another cup of crime.